Welcome back to Star Wars Shovelware, my name's Luke, and today on the channel we're going to be taking a look at Silt on the Nintendo Switch. And this one is a puzzle adventure game set in the depths of a dark and surreal ocean, whose unsettling environments are home to strange creatures, ancient machinery, and monstrous goliaths. Now, after seeing this game previewed at EGX last year, I instantly thought of games like Limbo, Inside, and even Abe's Odyssey, but how much inspiration does the game take from these titles, and what sets it apart from them? Well, hit that like button, subscribe for more Switch reviews and content, and let's find out. So sometimes when I cover the story elements of games, I like to start by saying that I intend to avoid spoilers. However, after playing my way through Silt, I can safely say that I'm none the wiser to the actual meaning of the story with this one. Now, the story begins without any real introduction, save a few lines of poetry, and much like the aforementioned Inside and Limbo games, Silt sees you playing as a sole individual, that being a lone diver who for some reason awakes chained to the floor of a cavern. After breaking free, it's then left to the player to explore and find their way without any kind of prompt or instruction, and this kind of sets the precedence for the rest of the game, as you're never really given a reason for doing the things you're doing, and the game plays heavily into the intrigue factor, leaving the player to interpret the events they experience and come to their own conclusions on what it all means. Now, from what I could gather, it seems like the diver is responsible for reactivating some kind of ancient monolithic structure deep in the ocean, and doing so requires the souls of powerful beasts. Along the way, should you be observant enough, you may make discoveries which hint at what its potential purpose may be, but there's no text or dialogue in the game, so most of your information will come from the environments you explore. Now, I've been pretty obscure with my outline of the story, but to be honest it's probably for the best, as I think it's best that you come to your own conclusions with this one, and I assume that that is exactly what the developer intended. Because of its obscurity, it's really hard for me to say whether the story was a good or a bad one, but like the other games that I've mentioned, I was still left with many questions after the credits rolled, and still uncertain as to what I just experienced. So when it comes to gameplay in Silt, while there are some exploration elements to it, the route through the game is predominantly linear. As you work your way through it, you'll be solving puzzles as you go, which usually bar the exit to the next area, and these are primarily environmental puzzles, though there are a couple which involve hostile creatures. As is the case with Limbo, there are also some trial and death elements in the game, and you're often given little to no warning before your diver is killed, and if you're not familiar with this kind of gameplay, then it can be a little frustrating sometimes. Now, the controls in the game are relatively simple. You move your diver with the left thumbstick, can hold the A button to swim a little faster, and can move the camera with the right thumbstick, which is useful for taking a look at your surroundings. The main gimmick or gameplay mechanic in Silt though involves the possession of different life forms, and this is performed by holding the B button down and directing this wispy white contrail looking thing towards the creature you want to take control of. Now, not every creature can be possessed, but the ones who can each have their own abilities activated by pressing the Y button. These include things like a bite attack, a teleportation skill, and emitting an electrical charge, and in 99% of the cases you'll be using these abilities in one way or another to solve the environmental puzzles. Although the controls work well for the most part, I will say that they can be a little frustrating, especially when precise movement is required, and this becomes more apparent towards the latter half of the game. Now, when it comes to the puzzles in Silt, I thought there was a decent amount of thought being put into them, with there usually being a little bit of trial and error involved required to solve them. Sometimes you need to perform an action with one possessed creature before transferring your consciousness over to another, and the vast majority of these puzzles involve clearing a path for your diver to progress forwards. What I will say about them though, and where I have to admit I was a little disappointed with the game, is that none of the puzzles really offer any kind of challenge, be that mentally or otherwise, and the solutions to them are usually apparent almost as soon as you enter the area. While I don't think it was the intent of the developer to make the game overly difficult, I would have liked to have had at least a few more complex puzzles to solve, but instead, towards the end of the game, the challenge with this one comes more from precise movement than anything else, which rather than being fun, I actually found to be very frustrating. Now, the main objective in Silt involves the retrieval of 4 powerful souls from 4 great sea creatures, and in order to get your hands on these you'll have to go through a bit of a boss fight with them. Once again though, these are more puzzle focused rather than being actual combat encounters, and as with the rest of the game, they don't offer a huge amount of challenge, with the methods to defeating them usually being apparent right away, though I did really like the design of these bosses. Now, there's not an awful lot more I can say about the gameplay in Silt, and overall I'm left with mixed feelings about the game. On the one hand, I was a little disappointed with the overall lack of challenge it had to offer, and I found the last area of the game to be particularly frustrating, but I thought that it had some interesting ideas going on. I really liked how the game's possession mechanics worked, and overall I feel this one is more about taking in the game's atmosphere and trying to piece together its story, rather than giving the player a mental workout. Now, lastly, I want to make you aware that Silt is a relatively short game, taking me only a couple of hours at most to complete, but there are these strange divers for you to find, which are sometimes hidden away, so I believe there may be an alternative ending to the game involving finding all of them. When all said and done though, if you enjoyed Limbo or Inside, you may enjoy this one. It has a similar dark atmosphere and obscure plot for you to puzzle over, and it's one that can be played through in a single sitting, so it's perfect for those people short on time. So the visuals and audio in Silt are by far my favourite aspect of the game. I absolutely love the dark hand-drawn art style, which features an amazing amount of detail in both its environments and character models, and I loved how the sketches had been put together to build the game's monochrome world, with the lighting providing some great ambience to its environments. On the audio side of things, for the most part things are kept to a minimum sound effects wise, with us getting some muffled water sounds as though we were hearing the world directly from inside our diver's helmet, and this actually gives some amazing ambience, especially when wearing headphones. When it comes to music, the soundtrack is predominantly comprised of dark ambient tones which help to add elements of tension, suspense and horror to the game, and I really thought these worked well to build on the overall atmosphere of it. All in all, great stuff on the visual and audio front. So performance wise, for the most part the game runs very well on the Switch. I did have a few minor frame rate drops in some of the larger, more open areas of the game, but nothing that really impacted on gameplay. When it comes to issues, there are only really a couple that I have to mention. Firstly, like I said, precise movement of your diver can be a little difficult, which I found was mainly due to the way his character sprite moves, and towards the latter half of the game I had some real issues when trying to move quickly and navigate through tight tunnels. My biggest frustration though came towards the end of the game, in a section where you need to avoid these giant slug creatures and smaller exploding ones. While attempting to get through this area, I encountered a bug which occurred if I managed to possess the exploding ball creatures just as they detonated, and this soft-locked my game probably about 5 or 6 times, which nearly resulted in me rage quitting. Overall though, I have to say that I enjoyed my time with Silt, and while I will admit that I found the game's puzzles to be a little lacklustre, it was really the game's atmosphere which drew me in and kept me playing, though as I said, I'm still not entirely sure about what the game's ending meant. When it comes to my own personal rating though, I'm going to be giving Silt 3 out of 5 stars. Silt is a short atmospheric adventure through a dark and mesmerising underwater world, and while its environmental puzzles likely won't tax your brain much, the obscurity of its plotline will probably have you puzzled long after its credits roll. And so that just about does it for this review of Silt on the Nintendo Switch. As always, make sure to hit that like button if it helped you out. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the game and whether you're going to be giving it a go in the comments section below. And if you watch my content regularly but are not yet subscribed, then please consider doing so. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.